but you can do it if you think about how you launch. And do you do kind of these smaller launches? And it may not be, hey, I need to change the product, but I may need to change my messaging, or I might need to tweak my targeting customer. And now you can expand that out to the next bigger size launch you want to do.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Productside Stories, the podcast where we share the very real and raw lessons learned from product leaders and thinkers all over the world. I'm your host, Rena Lexon, and today I'll be talking with Eric Stevenson, the Director of Product Management, Marketing, and Pricing at PPG in Architectural Coatings. We'll be talking today about product management from the lens of the industrial and manufacturing industry, which is a topic that I think is just so relevant because it impacts our very physical world. Eric, thanks so much for joining me today. I like to start by asking all of our guests the first question of how did you get started in product management? Can you tell us your story?
Sure, Rena. Thanks for having me, and excited to be here. So I got in product management kind of by accident. So I'm a chemical engineer by degree. I worked in manufacturing for a while and had an opportunity to move over to supply chain. And when I was with supply chain, I worked with the product management team, setting up a vendor managed inventory system with our largest customer who had operations in China and Puerto Rico, and working through that process and spending time with product management in setting up our customers and providing this solution to them. I really learned about how they interact with customers, and it really interested me. And at the end of the project, when we were all said and done, the leader of the product management team came to me and said, hey, we're going to look at reorganizing. Would you be interested in coming to product management? And really not knowing a lot about product management, having been an engineer and really in supply chain, I just wanted to be close to a customer. And so I said, yeah, let's go do it. And so they offered me a job, and that was, almost 20 years ago now. And that was my first role in product management. And I've been doing product management ever since.
And so you've been now a product manager, I think, at some of the biggest brands, GE, you've been at Philips, now at PPG. I feel like these are all very different products, but because they're all in industrial and manufacturing, you have to, I guess, think about product development very different than somebody who works in software does, right? There's a lot of other components. There's supply chain, you're working with global markets. So there's just a number of different types of users to think about. What would you say maybe some of the challenging aspects of your role, and thinking about, either earlier in your career or right now, what are some of the challenging aspects of being a product manager in the industrial manufacturing industry?
Yeah, I think one of the things you have to think about is it's not just developing the product and creating the product with the right value proposition and attributes that your customers want, but you have to think about how you deliver that product to the customer. What type of manufacturing footprint do you have? Where are you going to supply it from? How do you build capacity for that? How is that product going to ramp up into the market? And you're going to need to ensure supply. So I think what's interesting in my career is I've had the opportunity to do a bunch of different industries. In GE, when I was in the lighting industry, we would sell light bulbs, and you sell millions of light bulbs at a time. And so what does that manufacturing look like? How do you get it to distribution? And then when I went to the medical world and we were doing CT machines, it was 200 units a year. And so that volume perspective and how long it takes to build a finished product, and what does it take to move a finished product from where you're manufacturing it to your end customer, you have to work very closely with the cross-functional teams. And that's one of the things, in product management that I love, is that I get to work with all the different functions across the business. I one day can be talking to supply chain. I can about what's going to be our forecast and how does their inventory look and how are we going to deal with slow moving inventory that we need to dispose of. And the next day I'm working with R&D around what intellectual properties are we working for this product, and how are we going to use that intellectual property to differentiate ourselves versus our customers.
So I picked up that you said with the medical devices company, you were building a product that sold 200 units a year. Did I get that right?
Yes. So yeah, I had responsibility for premium CT machines,
Mm-hmm.
and those machines would sell for $2 million a unit. And so we would sell 200 of them a year, and that was the total quantity. And coming from an industry in light bulbs where we were selling millions of light bulbs a year, the development time, the process time, the manufacturing times are all completely different. But what's interesting is the skill sets that you have as a product manager translate across the businesses. You just have to learn how the different products and different processes work.
Well, I can imagine that when you're building only 200 units of something, one, the risk of any decision is much greater, right? You can't mess up. And then the other that I would think about is that there are only so many customers that you are serving out in the market. So, in terms of just how do you do market research and how do you make sure that the decisions that you are making, you're de-risking them as much as possible? How do you do that in that small market?
Yeah, and I think it's also the time it takes to develop. So it is 3 to 5 years to develop a CET machine. And if you get it wrong and you don't get your value proposition right, the time and cost it would take to fix that can be significant. And so it's very important as you go through, really defining what is the problem you're solving for the customer? What is the job that they're trying to get done? How are you spending as much time as you can in that value proposition development process to really understand the customer and what their need is and what the problem that they're trying to solve in, and then how are you validating that across many customers as you possibly can. And a lot of that is trying to bring them into your development process. And so we would we would have customer advisory boards that we would partner with, where we had I'll call a diverse group of customers that we would bring in, and we would test our value propositions worth. And we had a couple mechanisms to rate those value propositions to really define what's the most important to the customer. What are the things that are must haves? And then what are the things that are really differentiation versus the competition, or really solves problems that they have that nobody else is solving. And that process, the more you do that up front, the more success you can have in your product at launch.
And then talk to me about obsolescence, because when you have such long development cycles, you need to make sure that whatever you are building, the product you're building or thinking about today, it's not just going to be available for the next 5 years while you're developing it, but you have to service it. It's out in the market. There's a lifetime for that product. So how do you think about how do you learn about whether or not the technology or the materials that you need will still be there for the life of
So
the product?
So on CT machines, they
Mhm.
have a long life because it's such a long development. So you'll put a CT machine in the market and it'll last 10 or 12 years. And you can kind of see as you get to the end of that product, you already have kind of the next plans. Here's how it's going to progress. In the CT world, you had to manage service agreements, products that will stay longer. And so you're pretty clear on, hey, I'm going to have obsolescence. I'm going to have parts and pieces. I think what was more interesting is in my lighting world, where I was in the LED side of the business, where the life cycles were every 9 months. So every 9 months, you'd have to launch a new product. That's a very short period of time to figure out how you're going to manage a transition of old product out and new product into the market, especially when performance would double. So an LED bulb would be twice as bright and half the price. And so managing that process and having a very clear ramp down, ramp up process was very important to us. But then also finding ways to say, as you get closer to the launch of the new product, what promotions could you run to help, drive down your inventory just as you were launching your new product. And so you had to really create innovative ideas to get customers to take the old product versus, hey, I'm ready to buy the new product.
What kind of lighting products were you working? Was it more commercial, like office building lighting, or was it retail where you're distributing with a number of different stores?
So ours was mostly in the signage industry where you
Mm.
went through distribution. So we would sell LED lighting to the signage distributors, and then the distributors would sell it to a variety of sign shops or manufacturers. And we were replacing custom made neon, where you had trade skillsmen into just general lights on a string that you could place within a sign lighting. And so that portion of it was not only getting distributors to take your product in, but also how are you making value propositions for sign shops to want to use your product.
And then, so how would you tweak the value proposition in order to push the product that, let's say, it was going out or becoming obsolete versus the new product that was just, I mean, 2x better and more efficient?
So we would run a lot of promotions at the end. So as we would get close to ending a life of a product and launching a new product, we would find sign shops that maybe have large projects, and we would make one-time offers to them. Hey, you can take, if you buy 3 pallets of material, we'll give you a discount. And we knew it would get eaten up in a very large project and not really cannibalize new sales for new projects that were coming forward. And so we really focused on how do we find those opportunities to move kind of large volume through some type of discount versus just putting it in the market and then trying to cannibalize the new product that was going to be launched.
Do you find the same in the paints industry? Because I noticed in your title, right, you have product management, marketing, and pricing. And in talking with you right now, I understand why those things are falling under the same person. But is the paints industry similar? Is it transferable from lighting?
It's very transferable. So all the skill sets in product management, have really transferred. I tell everybody I've done the same job, just keep doing it with different products in some different industries. And paint's the exact same way. And I think in paint, it can be even more complicated because the number of distribution points is significantly larger. So in the paint industry, we actually sell through our own stores. So we go from a manufacturing site to a distribution center to 500 retail stores, PPG retail stores, or we'll go from a distribution center into 2,000 Home Depots. And so when you think about needing to bring in a product and you need to replace an old product, there's a lot of how do you work with the retailers? How do you ensure that product flows through all those distribution points? And then when you get to that transition, what do you do with your leftover product? And that's where you look at unique things like recycled paint, where we have companies that we take paint that's older, that's being replaced with new versions, and we bring them back and we mix them into recycled paint. And that's a great sustainability message for PPG is rather than taking paint and then throwing it away or putting it in a landfill, we're actually finding a way to recycle it and resell it for other uses. Which is a great message and great sustainability story for PPG.
I mean, that just makes sense. And as a recent purchaser of actually PPG paint from Home Depot, I can say that I don't even know the difference between, the eggshell whites and the whites and the whatever. There's like 50 whites. But I can definitely see how it's part of the marketing too, right? In terms of what are the popular colors? Are people into Art Deco? Are they into more of the industrial look? And you have to stay in line with what the market is wanting. But then, I mean, you just have so many different players. So you just in this, I mean, we've not been talking very long, and you've mentioned distribution, you mentioned retailers, you mentioned end consumers, suppliers. There are just so many more types of people, personas, and stakeholders you have to manage. I wonder, are you just a very skilled project planner and communicator? I feel like that should be top of the list of the things that you need to do every day.
Yeah, I always tell people, when you look at product managers, I think one of the first skill sets that I look for in people, can you lead cross-functionally? Because your day is talking to salespeople, finance people, supply chain, R&D, customers, and getting them all aligned into where you're trying to take your portfolio or your products or your brands is very important to being successful. And I think when you talked about a lot of personas, you look at the paint industry. We have to convince architects and designers. We have to convince paint contractors. We have to convince consumers. We have to convince the retailers. So there's a lot of different touch points that as we build our products and we build our value propositions, we have to be very clear on who we're targeting.
Yeah. And I saw, I read in the news, I don't know, the other day where there's even paint now, which can help with the environment, which helps cool down buildings. So there is just all of this innovation in paint that I never thought about until I started trying to buy some. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So thinking about your, now you're a PPG, I like to ask about challenges that you've experienced, lessons learned. Can you think about a story or an experience where things didn't quite go to plan, and what did you do about it?
Yeah, I think we had a great example. We decided to bring in our texture product line. We decided to bring a piece of equipment. We wanted to move from what we call small texture jobs, where you're doing 1 or 2 square feet, to being able to supply a product that people could use to do a house or do a whole ceiling. And we developed a piece of equipment along with a cartridge that fit into it. And we went out and we built the value proposition, and we tested the value proposition with individual contractors, and they loved it. I mean, it came back phenomenal from our tests and our trials. And we're like, this is going to be the greatest product since sliced bread. And we just went out to the market with one big push, and we got it out to the market. We put it in the retailer, and it didn't move as fast as we thought it would from the retail shelf. And, if you put something into retail and it doesn't move, they're very quickly looking at you and saying, hey, what are you going to do? How are you going to drive this? How are you going to get success? And as I step back and I kind of look at that misstep that we had, I look at, well, what did we do wrong? And I think one of the things was we always try to do these big launches where, hey, we're going to launch all the way across the United States. And I think we would have been better off first starting and launching in a small market and letting the product live for a longer period of time with more success with individual customers that you can then learn on and build upon before really looking to expand. And I think that learning was key to us and how we think about product launches moving forward. It's tough. It's tough to go through that time. You get a lot of finger pointing and a lot of pressure on why didn't it work? What did you do wrong? And I don't think anybody did anything wrong. I think we learned trying to launch a device and being a device manufacturer, which we were not before. We took a lot of learnings away that I think will help the team going forward.
So I think that's a good learning. However, I could imagine that it's pretty hard when you are creating a physical product. The cost of creating and developing that product, I mean, it's pretty large. It depends on, of course, on the development cycle for that product, as we've talked about. But you need to gather. It's almost like you need to gather almost the same amount of people to agree to a certain amount of price, to get the materials for a smaller launch, as almost as much as you do for a bigger launch, unless I'm mistaken here.
No, the
Yeah,
process, the development as you
yeah.
build it is all the same. And I think one of the things that we all try to do in product management, we want our launch to be successful. We want to
Mhm.
be the product that the moment we launch, we get, $15 million of sales overnight, and you're taking over the world. And I think as you go into new categories that you haven't played in or not core to what you do, I think the slower you go sometimes, the better learning that you will have, the more successful launches you will have long term. And we've seen that in multiple, as we move into, I'll call it adjacent categories to what we do core, which is, make gallons of paint.
Mhm.
We've realized that we have to slow ourselves down from how we launch. And while the activities are all the same and the money is going to be spent, we have to expect that our payback's probably going to be longer because our ramp up time is going to be longer because there's things that we don't know until we can get the product into the market better. There's a lot that we can do in upfront, but there's still things you don't know until you actually get it into the market. And I think as you look at, can you do kind of micro launches, learn, adjust, and then expand that micro launch into, a market launch, and then into a state launch, and then into a region launch, and then into a national launch. You'll learn and adjust as you go. And I think that will really help you be successful. And that's, one of the things when you think around, if you try to tie it to the software where they talk about agile learning, it's harder in products because sometimes you build the product and it's hard to make the next edition like you can make in 3 months with software. But you can do it if you think about how you launch. And do you do kind of these smaller launches? You take that learning, and it may not be, hey, I need to change the product, but I may need to change my messaging, or I might need to tweak my targeting customer. And now you can expand that out to the next bigger size launch you want to do.
Yeah, so I think the parallel here that I can call to mind is Travis Kalanick and Uber, where he decided to do that strategy for launch. He would launch in he would launch in a specific city, then he would look to drive down, I think it was like the passenger wait time to get to the car, and then he would expand to another city and then go on and so forth. But as we're talking here with the physical product, you need to convince the business case to convince the business to invest in the physical product has to have some kind of forecast of we're going to sell this many buckets of paints, right? And if we do maybe a smaller launch, how do you get to convince business stakeholders that this is the right decision? Because I'm going to assume that they're more used to now culturally those bigger launches.
Yeah, I think you have to show them long term. And I think what you're showing them is just a slower ramp up to that
Mhm.
long term growth. Where a lot of times, and this was definitely, I would say, a weakness when I came into this organization from a product management side, and something that we've worked with the 280 group to focus on is, our assumptions would be unrealistic. We would put in, hey, we're gonna load into a retail channel, and then immediately we're gonna see growth off of that. Well, the reality is when you load into a retail channel, you'll have a decline after that massive load in, and then you begin to ramp up. And so part of it is just being more realistic. And what I found with the business is the more realistic and the more you can prove that you can hit your business cases, people will give you that breath of, hey, the payback's going to take a little bit longer, but they believe in the number versus you put a bunch in a business case, it's going to ramp up like this, and then you don't hit it. Now you lose credibility with leadership within the business.
Right. And I could see that being very powerful. We talk a lot about the importance of having trust, and trust is really created from saying what you're going to do and hitting it. Okay, so would you have done anything different had you launched in this more gradual approach? Do you think, is there learning in the market that you now have that would help you maybe relaunch this product, or was it just not really adopted by the market?
No, I think had we launched it smaller, we would have found a couple issues that were related with the product that we didn't realize when we built it and designed it. But over multiple uses, we found some issues that we needed to address. I think we would have found that earlier. I also think we would have had a tighter connection with the contractors that we were rolling this device out for. Also, it's very hard when you say, okay, we're gonna roll this out across the U.S. It's a big commitment across a large sales organization that you have to try to get aligned to that. You're trying to get all these customers in different regions to use the product. Where I think had we done this in a smaller market, we would have been able to be very close to the contractors, follow through them through the adoption process, take some of those additional learnings that would have helped us expand to other markets.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, retailers are not very forgiving when with their shelf space. So that's the other risk.
No,
Yeah.
they're a little impatient. They're very much impatient. They want the products on their shelf to move and move immediately. And I think, that's one of the I'll call it one of the negatives of working with retail. Retail can be positive because they can drive a ton of volume. But if you're not selling it out of their store, then you can become very quickly looking at, hey, how do I replace this product on shelf?
Yeah. So Eric, always a lot, and I love that you're saying we learned a lot because these situations they happen with software products, with physical products, and the important thing is what are you going to do differently as a result? Do you have also an example of maybe a more positive story around something that you didn't expect with a product launch where let's say that there was just an overall success out in the market that you didn't forecast? So do you have that kind of story?
Yeah, in PPG we were launched a new spray paint into the market, and we thought it was going to be we had a specific customer back request that we went out and filled, and thought, hey, that's really going to be it's going to be a product for one customer. And as we produced it and loaded it into market, and then we were having conversations with other customers, there was a lot of interest. They were like, wait, I didn't know you played in spray paint. I didn't know you played in this space. So, we'd love to see your technology. And we shared the technology. And now all of a sudden we're seeing multiple channels coming to us and saying, hey, we really would like that. We would like that product. Can we expand it into our channels? Can we move this under this brand? And I think what's interesting is it's super exciting because now we see growth in this portfolio. And then at the same time, it creates a lot of challenges because we weren't planning on
Mm.
capacity to ramp up like that. And so now we're in a balancing act with, yes, we want your business, and yes, we see this as a growth area. Now, how do I execute that and deliver on the volume in a capacity constraint? And that's where you get into, what are different ideas you have? Who can you partner with from a manufacturing standpoint? How do you think about capacity of when you have to load into a retailer? And then what is your capacity for kind of, I'll call it normal flow business after that? And so I always tell people those are good problems to have. When you have business and you're trying to solve problems because you have business, those are the good problems that you really want.
Yeah, I like to call those problems a success disaster because they're definitely the better problems to have, but they still take a lot of your mental energy to try to figure out all of the moving pieces. So okay, so this is a situation where you have a spray paint product, and did I hear you right that you found a completely new market? How did the customers find out that you had this new product if you're not known for it?
So some of it was they saw our launch
Mm.
with another retailer. Some of it was our product team working with the sales organization as we think about what are new innovations we can bring to customers that we have this technology over here, and how can we share it with other customers? So part of it was sharing it in kind of those type of reviews where we're talking about new innovations with different customers and different channels.
Okay, and then in this situation, because I often hear a lot when you're manufacturing something for a specific persona, did you have to, I don't know, change how you were talking about the product when you were trying to go after a different kind of market? Did that change at all in terms of how you were positioning yourself?
Yeah, a little bit. We had to change kind of some of the value propositions, based on the market that we were rolling into, and the different customer base. So, the product that we developed in technology was actually from our automotive business,
Mm.
and taking that and converting that into what was basically a product sold to professionals doing, car touch up, to consumers who are doing everyday kind of arts projects or painting your mailbox. How they use the product is completely different, and how they perceive it is completely different. And so part of that was validating, what were the customer needs that we had and what were the attributes of this product that tied to those customer needs and the problem that it solved for them. And then saying, okay, what's the right wording to communicate that value prop to customers, which is a lot of what we do as product management and working with our marketing organization is how do we word the value prop in a way that customers connect with it and get it instantly and like, oh yeah, that's a problem I have and that solves my problem.
What kind of testing do you do with customers when you're working with more retail type end users?
We do a variety. So like we'll do a lot of focus groups
Mhm.
with customers to get their feedback. What do they like? What do they not like? We do branding concept testing, claims concept testing with them. We do a lot with our own employees. So when we bring things like spray paint, we actually give people cans of spray paint. We go home and do the project and fill out this survey because it's instant feedback from we're all consumers. We all paint. I mean, we've all probably thought, gosh, my mailbox looks dinged up. I got to go out there and make it black again. And so, we try to find a variety of ways to reach a lot of different customers with getting feedback. And sometimes it's very formal in insights and consumer groups, and other times it's more informal with just internal employees to the company.
Yeah, I was secretly wondering, do you need any testers? Because I'll take some screening.
Only if you promise to do a TikTok video for us with it.
I could. There you go. Very smart. Or if you would have like a mural board somewhere in your office building where everybody could spray. There's just so many things you could do with products. Well, all right. So, Eric, I like to ask, since you've done this for a number of years, what advice do you have for somebody who is starting out and wanting to become a product manager, specifically in industrials and manufacturing?
So what I tell everybody coming into product management, there's no degree. You can't go to school and get a degree in product management. And so I always tell people you're going to go into the unknown. Be willing and accept the challenge. Whether you're in product management for the first time, coming from a different function, I've had great opportunities to build product management teams. And, in my current product management team, I have people from marketing, I have people from finance, I have people from R&D who have all come into product management. And I would always tell them, just accept the challenge. Know you're going to go into it not knowing everything. It's going to be a learning experience. And if you accept that challenge, then you'll succeed in it. And I look at my career and say, yeah, I've been a product manager, but I've done it in different industries and products in completely different life cycles, from super growth products to products in markets that are declining. And every time you go into that, you build a different skill set and you learn something new that will help you grow.
Well, Eric, it sounds like just from this conversation, I bet that you don't have 2 days that are exactly the same.
Never, never. I think every day is a little different. I think today was a great example. I came in and spent the day working with our R&D team on trying to figure out what are we going to do because we have a massive raw material obsolescence, and we've got to figure out how we're going to change formulations. And tomorrow, I'm spending the day with the sales organization talking about how we're going to approach a new customer to win some more business. And I think that's what's exciting about product management. And, I think if you want to see an entire business, there's not a better job to be in than product management, because you really get to see the entire business and you get to work with all the cross-functional teams.
Right. And I think specifically with industrials, manufacturing, like physical goods space, you'll have to know the business so much better sometimes than in software products. Just like the business model, it just relies on the product manager doing their job really well and being able to understand inventory management, forecasting, like really critical business skills. So, Eric, thanks for joining me today. How can people find you after this episode?
You can reach me on LinkedIn. It's Eric Lee Stevenson. And no, Rena, I really appreciate you having me, and great discussion today.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into Productside Stories. I hope today's insights inspire you and propel your product journey forward. Remember, as we said today, every challenge is just a lesson waiting to be learned. Visit us at productside.com for more free resources, including webinars, templates, playbooks, and other product wisdom repackaged for you. I'm Rena Lexon, and until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, and keep creating stories worth sharing.